doesn't go to podcast. Otherwise, this would be like the worst intro in the world. But hello to the Periscope people. Hello to Twitch. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Sports. I am back again today. You get a double dose for the first time in a while. I'm joined by one Ship My Money, Adam Scher, fresh off the holidays. I haven't seen you in a while, buddy. What's going on?
Yeah, it has been a while. Things are good. Still at my mom's house, making my way back to Baltimore tomorrow morning, probably. But holidays were good. Sounds like mine was probably more enjoyable than yours was.
Depends how your DFS life went.
That's true.
Sounds like it might have been 50-50. We've got 5 games to walk through today. Laffy and I took the lap through to begin the day, and Adam and I are going to do it again here. Lots to talk about first. We got to talk about Yahoo first. Looks like who did it? Someone on the Osmo account, which I greatly appreciate, has dropped the link to the Cash Building Blocks article from one EMAC himself. And it's the only way that you can become a baller. Everybody wants to become a baller, so why wouldn't you want to just go check out EMAC's article, learn a little something about today's slate, first and foremost, and then click the link at the bottom, use the promo code Osmo, and get yourself up to $30 in YSRPs, Yahoo Sports Rewards points. You're going to be playing lower management fee contests. You're going to be playing softer competition, a fantastic selection of contests. You're going to see a lot more 10 max, so you're not going up against just 150 bullets from everybody. It's going to be a much easier place to play, in my opinion. I highly recommend you check it out. And again, if you want to become a baller, the only spot that you can do it. Laffy needs royalties on that, man. He came up with it. He's the man. You can't beat it. We also have a little bit of a giveaway going on today. It is day 4 of our 8 Crazy Nights giveaway. If you head to Osmo_com, which is our Twitter account, I'm actually going to drop the tweet. Actually, already in there. Whoever's rocking the Osmo account on YouTube today is crushing it. So if you want to win a free Osmo Plus NHL yearly pass, that's a $280 value. All you have to do is go look at that tweet. You'll have to guess which 2 teams on tonight's NHL slate score the least amount of goals. Lowest. Looking for shutouts here, people. You got to guess those 2 teams. Retweet, like, and reply to that tweet. You need to be following Osmo.com, or the Osmo_com account, the Osmo Odds account, and the Osmo NHL account. All of that information is in the pinned tweet at Osmo_com. Go check it out. Adam, 5 games. Some of them, awesome. Really excited to look at them, to dig into them. Makes for a really interesting slate. Others, a little bit less so. Really cut and dry, kind of just ugly, and it's gonna be sort of a weird slate. We got a decent ownership update about 45 minutes ago, so I think we're ready to just fully dive in. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go.
Here we go. Charlotte Hornets, Oklahoma City Thunder. Hornets 1-point favorites here at home. Do I have that correct? That already feels like I made a typo before I even got started.
I see them as 3-point dogs. Nope, now I see it as a pick'em.
I've got 1-point favorite, so we'll call it somewhere in that neighborhood at the very least. Intriguing. 104.75 for the Hornets, 103.75 for the Thunder is what I've got right now. So we will start on the Hornets side. A little bit of ownership coming into Devontae Graham, a little bit of ownership coming into Terry Rozier, and just in case anybody is curious, ownership today, free. So if you head to Osmo.com, head to our NBA ownership page, you can check out exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have to worry about me just spewing it out to you guys. But Terry Rozier right now, currently the most owned guy on FanDuel from the Hornets. Devontae Graham, the leader in the clubhouse on DraftKings, but nobody really breaking free from the pack too much. Is anybody breaking free for you?
Yeah, I don't really think they should be. You mentioned at the top that there's a couple of games that are a little bit more exciting than the rest, and especially with the news that Giannis is doubtful, this strikes me as a slate where the chalk is good, the chalk is obvious, and the chalk will be highly owned. But because people still just pay so much attention to medium projections, you're going to get probably relatively low ownership on a lot of other guys. And I think that's kind of where this game comes in. Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier are both projected for 10 to 15% ownership. It's not that they're great plays, but they do have relatively high ceilings for their prices. They play 37, 38 minutes in competitive games. It's not a good matchup against OKC, whatsoever, but they're guys that at their ownership, I don't mind being around the field or a little bit over. Beyond them, though, from the Charlotte side, there's really not much to be excited about. Like um, Bismack Biyombo is 4,600. That's the same price range as a lot of much more popular centers, which means that you could make the argument that you can pivot to him in tournaments and you just hope that he beats that group of Aaron Baines and Cauley Stein and Lopez. But I do have him projected worse than those guys by a pretty decent margin. So I'm not sure that it's a spot that I would want to be putting a lot of money into, but it is worth mentioning that he's at least that same price point.
Yeah, this just feels like one of those games, or at least this side of it, where it's a 5-game slate. You're clearly going to be working in the guys that get major minutes just because that's how it works on a 5-gamer. You only have so many options. But Graham and Rozier just sort of have to be the priorities. Have you taken a look at PJ Washington's price on FanDuel today by any chance? Does that appeal to you at all?
Probably more so than the 6,400 on DraftKings does.
5,200 on FanDuel today.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid salary.
The question is just how many minutes does he play in his return?
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 34 minutes. I'm not expecting him to really be limited, but I have him as my fourth best power forward, including salary on FanDuel.
Okay, perfect. Oh, Miles Bridges, the only other guy that we haven't really talked about picking up ownership. That's at 14% on FanDuel, and I would say that's basically just a function of the small forward position.
Yeah, I think so. His minutes scare me. He got over 30 minutes last game, but that was the first time in a while. And then now you have PJ Washington back, so it's another guy for James Borrego to give minutes to, and for the rotation to be pretty messy. Obviously hard to know exactly how many minutes Nick Batum gets now, how many minutes Cody Martin gets, how many of those minutes come from Bridges. So I don't really have any confidence in him, but small forward sucks. So,
is there anything else you want to touch on from the Hornets?
No.
As expected. Oklahoma City side, no Danilo Gallinari. Ownership coming in exactly like you would sort of expect it. It's been tempered a little bit since it was earlier today. Chris Paul, double digits. Steven Adams, double digits. SGA, double digits. Nerlens Noel on FanDuel, also double digits. A little surprising to me. Of these guys, I think that Adams on FanDuel is probably my favorite of the options, but this is a spot where I expected to have a lot more interest with Gallo out than I do. Laffy did have that interest. Break the tie. Where are you at on the Thunder?
Really interested in Steven Adams. I think that it's a great spot for him. He's very affordable. He's only 6,200 on DraftKings. He's 6,400 on FanDuel. Really good matchup. Charlotte has allowed the 10th most offensive rebounds per game this season. They've allowed the 5th most points in the paint. Adams is 9th in offensive rebounds per game, excluding DeAndre Ayton and Gary Payton II, who have each played 2 games. And 87.3% of Steven Adams' points have come in the paint this season. His minutes have been trending up. For a lot of the season, we saw it was kind of like he was capped at 28 minutes. Now he's playing, between 28 and 32. So getting a little bit more playing time. Really good matchup for him. Gallinari being out shouldn't hurt. I mean, the rebounding should go up a little bit, potentially gets a little bit more usage. Schroeder's questionable too. You could see him Adams involved a little bit more offensively. So I think that it's a great spot for him. I still think that Chris Paul and Gilgeous-Alexander are underpriced as well. The reason that they're less of a priority for me, though, is that there's a lot of underpriced guards today. Guard is absolutely stacked, especially where you can't roster Chris Middleton at forward. So it's just harder naturally to get to the guards here, I think, than it is to get to Adams.
So you mentioned Schroeder also being questionable. Let's talk about what happens if he is out. Oklahoma City, not necessarily known for having wing depth that's fun. It's usually just like 6 dudes that play the exact same style of terrible. Does anything open up for you on a slate like today if Schroeder ends up sitting?
I don't think anything becomes a whole lot more appealing as far as the value goes because OKC still has bodies, and none of those bodies are very appealing DFS plays. Um, Baisley is cheap, but he only played like 18 minutes yesterday. Even if I project him for 24 or 26 minutes, he doesn't become very appealing. If you give more minutes to Abdel Nader, which I think would most likely happen, he's not super appealing either. Deontay Burton probably picks up more minutes. I mean, none of these guys are just very appealing options. Without Gallinari or Schroeder on the floor, you don't really have much of a sample size for guys like Gilgeous-Alexander or Paul either. So it's tough to say exactly what happens with them. But I think that the biggest benefit, the biggest change if Schroeder's out is just that you would have more usage for Gilgeous-Alexander, Paul, maybe some going to Steven Adams, than that I want to start rostering guys like Terrence Ferguson or something like that.
If Schroeder ends up out, do you think anybody's ownership gets like wildly high here?
I wouldn't think so because I think that most of the minutes go to guys that just aren't really useful for DFS. I think maybe people could convince themselves to play more Gilgeous-Alexander and more Paul, but I think those guys are getting ownership anyway. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that a whole lot changes other than obviously minutes and usage are just more secure for those guys.
Makes sense to me. Let's sum this game up. Favorite play from the entire game. And if you
Steven
want to give me
Adams.
one for FanDuel, one for DraftKings, knock yourself out.
Steven Adams for all of it.
Steven Adams. There you go. Head to Orlando. Orlando Magic, Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers 3.5-point favorites in Orlando. Only real news here for the Magic is that we're not going to have Michael Carter-Williams. Unfortunately, we do not get that revenge narrative. Pour one out for all the revenge narrative people. Little bit more ownership coming in on the Orlando side from FanDuel than it is on DK. On DK, we're only getting Vooch in double digits. On FanDuel, it's Vooch, Isaac, Gordon, Fultz, Augustine. To me, this is a two-horse team. It's Nikola Vucevic. I like him more on FanDuel than I do on DK. And it's Jonathan Isaac. I like him more on FanDuel than I do on DK. I'm not really wild about either one of these guys in this spot. It's the Sixers. They're a horrible defensive matchup. This is not exactly going to be a track meet either. What do you want to do with Magic?
I almost fell asleep while you were talking about this game because it's just that uninteresting to me.
Yep.
It's just two good defensive teams. Philadelphia plays faster than Orlando, which is nice for the Magic, but Philadelphia obviously a very long, very good defensive team. So not really that appealing there. The price on Vooch has started to come up. In a lot of matchups, he's 7,700 on DraftKings. In a lot of matchups, that would be still pretty appealing for him. But on a slate like this, where you have a lot of value at the center position, you also have a really tough matchup for Vooch. It's tough to get there. There's just nothing on Orlando that I like outside of the obvious. He's low owned. He could score points and help you in a tournament, which doesn't really help anyone.
Yeah, I wanted to dig into something here, but there's just nothing to be found. Mo Bamba also out, completely meaningless in this scenario. Just 15 more minutes for Kem Birch instead. This is about as plug and play as it gets, at least for Orlando, which is nice, makes it easier. Is there any chance that like Bamba being out gets more minutes for Vooch if the game is close?
I kind of thought about that. Like, could he get to 36 minutes? And I think the answer is yes, but I still can't. I'm not projecting him for more. I still have him at 33. Sure. I think that maybe the range of outcomes gets a little bit wider for him, which is nice. And he is my favorite option from Orlando. It's just I think it's still really hard to get to him. Especially, he's projected for 15% ownership on DraftKings right now, which if he were projected at 3 or 4% or something like that, I would start to have some interest. But he's at 15. Adams is lower than that. Like, if that holds, I'm going to just be jamming Steven Adams.
Yep, you and I are on the same page there. Let's move to Philly. Stop me if you've heard this before, but there are only a couple guys on Philly that are viable because it's the same guys over and over and over again. Joel Embiid, 9,500 on FanDuel, 9,700 on DraftKings, projected for roughly 20% ownership. Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, all in double digits as well. Not sure I see the appeal here, other than Embiid on FanDuel. certainly love it. And not that I have some massive problem with him for 9,700 on DraftKings, especially on a day where, Giannis is not a part of this slate anymore. It's just a horrible fantasy game. How do you manage the Sixers tonight?
Yeah, it's a pretty unappealing fantasy game. I am interested in Embiid, obviously, and it's easy to get to him as far as there's just not pay up options on the slate with Giannis out, and there's a lot of value because Giannis is, we assume, out. But at center there is opportunity cost. Obviously we talk all the time about there being a lot of opportunity costs at the position on FanDuel since you can only roster one. But even on DraftKings today, because of Cauley Stein, Baines, Lopez all being cheap, because you have Adams, Vooch, obviously is another guy that at least has a ceiling there. There's a lot of centers that are cheaper than Embiid, where if you pay down there, you get access to those really good guards, whether it's Booker, Rubio, Russell, Trae Young, like whoever. So from a roster construction standpoint, I think that I'll prefer to pay down at center. What would change that is if Embiid's ownership came down, but right now he's not really projected for low ownership. So most likely I'll end up just getting overweight on the guards that I want to pay for at the expense of some Embiid ownership.
I assume I'll end up on, shares of Simmons and Harris. Probably not all that much Horford. I think he looks like the least appealing to me at this point, but for some reason,
yeah, he's grading out really poorly for me too, which is weird because normally I'm higher on Horford than most people.
So am I. Did you open my spreadsheet today? I don't know what it is that's making that happen. 6,400 on FanDuel seems like a reasonable price. 5,700 on DraftKings seems like a reasonable price. I don't expect to have that sort of amount of Al Horford. If you're getting okay, so we're both on the same page. It's Embiid on Philly, right? As that's the guy that could really break this.
Yeah, Embiid's the number one Philly guy for me.
Okay. How big is the gap between Embiid and Simmons for you right now?
Like 9 DraftKings points.
A little bit bigger than mine, but I have very little interest in Simmons as well.
The thing that makes it interesting though is the positions, especially on DraftKings, because Simmons and Harris, you can roster both of them at Ford, and Ford is just a lot weaker on this slate than guard is, and center is. So even though I don't have Harris or Simmons projected nearly as good for their salaries as Embiid, I think that when you factor in the position, there's at least a chance that Simmons and Harris end up being a little bit more valuable.
We got a question in Premium Slack. Can we pool our YSRPs to get Ship My Money a new cam?
I'll have the new one tomorrow or Monday. Didn't bring my good camera home for Christmas.
Reasonable. Do you have anything else in this game that we're missing?
No.
All right, let's sum it up then. Favorite play from this game, both sides.
Embiid.
Works for me. I can make a case that I would rather have Vooch on FanDuel than Embiid, but it's close. 7,900 just low, but I don't know what that extra money gets me.
Right.
Yet. All right, now we can start talking about some ridiculous nonsense, like the Atlanta Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks. We're going to have some DFS plays here. The Bucks are 8-point favorites in Atlanta. No Giannis now, which is kind of exciting. For the Hawks, no Alex Len, so seems like a 1-to-1 swap. Or not. Either way. We'll start on the Atlanta side. Clearly still a difficult matchup, whether or not Giannis is there or not. 10-4 for Trae Young on FanDuel, 10-8 on DraftKings. He's picking up some ownership. I like the I like the $47 price for him on Yahoo for right now. John Collins in the high 20s in ownership. Kevin Herter, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, all picking up a little bit more. Who's the guy from the Hawks that stands out most to you?
Trae and Collins.
Ooh, neither of those words were Kevin Herter, which would be the guy that's standing out most to me at some mildly low ownership. Talk to me a little bit about Trae in the spot, sans Giannis.
I just think that, for one, Milwaukee obviously is worse defensively and overall without Giannis. But Young's playing huge minutes, really regardless of the game. He's played at least 40 in 3 of his last 4, played at least 36 in 6 straight, and obviously leads the team in usage. So I think that he just becomes really appealing because it's easy to get to him with with all the value and with Giannis probably not playing. So I like Trey a lot. I like Collins because I think that for one, he's just underpriced. He's 8,100 on FanDuel. He's 7,600 on DraftKings. He's not restricted at all. He's still in game shape. Played about 35 minutes his first game back, but he should get a ton of minutes at center today with Alex Len doubtful. In the last game, Len played about 6 minutes. Collins played a bunch at center. I don't expect Fernando or Damian Jones to be picking up tons of minutes. So I think Collins' playing time is a bit more valuable than it normally is, and he's a good fantasy producer anyway. So those are the two that I'm most interested in. Herder and Hunter, I think the minutes are there, but you're still talking about an Atlanta team that has a ton of bodies and doesn't have to give tons of minutes to anyone. So I feel a lot better about Young and Collins, especially because you don't really need value from Herder. Like you don't really need the Herder and Hunter value all that much on this slate.
Do you expect to see Trae Young's ownership rise even more? He's at 19% on DraftKings, and it doesn't seem like it's all that difficult to afford him.
I think so. The reason that I could see it staying down there is just because $6,900 Booker and $7,400 Russell are obviously going to command a lot of ownership. George Hill's going to get a lot of ownership at 4,200. You have DiVincenzo, you have Rubio. Like guard is just absolutely stacked. Like when I wrote the deep dive today, I think I wrote about 5 or 6 guards and then mentioned another 4 or 5 as good plays. And then I think total including guys I wrote about and honorable mention guys, I think I had like 6 forwards.
That's craziness. I mean, not that I disagree with you or anything. It is a really wild day for what is like a relatively small slate.
Right. The other thing that I think helps Young's ownership or makes it easier to get to him is that on DraftKings you can roster Middleton at forward. On FanDuel, Middleton's a shooting guard and Young's a point guard. So obviously you're not taking positions away from Trae Young with Middleton.
I expected to be a little bit more on Collins. We have him at 26% ownership on FanDuel right now, 28 on DraftKings. On the last go, that was the 6th highest number. Now, I'm not worried about like the actual size of that number. It is what it is there. I'm not sure I'm going to get much at all. And
of Collins?
Yes. Which makes me feel crazy, first and foremost. I just got done taking a lap through rates, made my adjustments, came back. And like, if I have him in a lineup today, I'd be surprised. And that feels shockingly incorrect.
Are you talking FanDuel specifically or DraftKings? Or?
I can cast that net pretty wide.
Okay, because I have him as my number 2. I have him as my second favorite power forward on FanDuel, and I have him in my DraftKings cash lineup right now.
Wow. So you would very clearly prefer him to Domantas Sabonis?
I have that whole group kind of close, but I have Collins projected for like the same as Sabonis, and he's a little bit cheaper.
Okay. I have a massive gap between Sabonis and John Collins tonight. 5.5 points as of right now.
On FanDuel, I have Collins at 40.1 and Sabonis at 40.2.
I have a very different outcome here. 36 on Collins.
How many minutes do you have in that?
32.
Oh, okay, I have 36.
Okay. Well, there's your difference.
Why do you only have 32?
When I took my lap through, in order to get even remotely close to some of his prop lines, it was either I make his rates be not his rates, or I have to lower the time that he's on the floor. I lowered the time that he was on the floor. I'm a little nervous about it. In a way, it makes sense. Look, I try not to look into this sort of stuff too much, but it generally makes me look in the direction of he's probably not going to play the 4th. Like that's not, I'm not like predicting a blowout. That's not what I'm trying to say or anything, but it's just that's what makes me think that clear across the board, his expected points, rebounds, assist numbers were lower.
Did those props come out before or after Giannis was listed as doubtful?
20 minutes ago.
Okay.
So read into that what you would. As of right now, John Collins is probably the guy that I am least on tonight. Does not make me excited at all. I assume that he's going to be a man possessed, and Milwaukee is certainly not the same defensive team with Giannis not on the floor than if he is there.
Yeah, and much more likely to be a competitive game too, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in this regard, probably lean Adams' direction because I'm not comfortable with it, but I let it ride. So that's where I'm standing right now. Team no John Collins. Ooh. I'm way more likely to have Kevin Herter, so that makes me feel fantastic. Or I'd much rather have the 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy than the John Collins out here smashing at 1.2.
Right.
Yeah, it happens. What are you going to do? Hunter, Reddish, anything else here from Atlanta?
Hunter's fine. I had more interest in him before we got all the value from Milwaukee.
Let's head to Milwaukee because there is some value to be found here. Chris Middleton, let's just start with it. 7,400 on FanDuel, 7K on DraftKings. I mean, with regards to like actual talent, is he the best play on the day?
Yeah, I think let me see if I can find it. In the deep dive today, my take on Middleton was he's the number one play on the slate. It's not close. Don't get cute. Don't let anyone tell you that he isn't the top play.
Yep, we're on the exact same page. 31% projected ownership on FanDuel seems low. 44% on DraftKings seems like a reasonable number to fly north of. There's really nothing that you can't like here. He is in an incredible spot.
Yeah, I thought he was a little bit underpriced when I thought Giannis was going to play.
Yeah.
And then you take Giannis out. Since last year, without Giannis, Brogdon, or Bledsoe on the floor, Middleton's averaged 1.56 DraftKings points per minute. I haven't projected for 30 minutes, but that number obviously could be higher. It's just I don't need it to be higher. I'm still getting him in every single lineup. It really just doesn't matter. The usage is at 38% over that time. Fast-paced Atlanta team, bad defensive team. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I would make the play every single time.
Talk to me about the rest of these Bucks. We've got Brook Lopez, Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, and George Hill all in double digits. Wes Matthews getting there on DraftKings as well. The biggest piece of ownership is coming into Ilyasova, 29% on FanDuel, where he's the flat minimum, 42% on DraftKings, where he's 3,300. Where are you most likely to concentrate all of your Bucks exposure?
All of them. I'm just playing a ton of Milwaukee. There's nobody that I look at and I'm like, I don't know why they're getting ownership. I don't think they're a good play. Wes Matthews has averaged 0.92 DraftKings points per minute without Giannis, Bledsoe, or Brogdon on the floor since last year. If you put Middleton on, it comes down a bit, but it's still enough to where if you're getting 27 or 28 minutes from Wesley Matthews against the Hawks, he's a good value. Obviously, he hasn't been very good this year, but different situation. DiVincenzo is someone that I didn't even give him more minutes, and he just becomes a better play because there's more usage, there's more rebounding for him, more assist opportunities. He's also inexpensive. George Hill's really cheap. Lopez is really cheap. It's just that, and Ilyasova generally plays 24 to 26 minutes when he starts for Giannis, and he's basically the minimum. So there's just really nothing that I'm shying away from on Milwaukee. I would rather have a bunch of combinations of being overweight on Milwaukee and just mixing and matching different guys than try and take a stand where I'm not rostering the Bucks today.
Okay, yeah, I don't see anybody that's at an ownership number that makes it like wildly unappealing. Ersan Ilyasova is not going to hurt you at 3,300, and nobody else is north of like mid 20s. So it's not like I don't know. It's not like Brook Lopez is at 60% ownership or something, and you need to make a move. Like it's just this is about as good of a spot as you're going to find against the Hawks in Atlanta. So in theory, the game should be closer in a more competitive game. Do you like Trae Young or John Collins better than anyone on Milwaukee? I know that's kind of a weird question, but I'm also filling time.
No, I know. I'm trying to think like how. I mean, I like them more than I like Wes Matthews.
Okay, better than the 5 guys that are actually getting any juice.
I like them better than Barolo.
Okay.
I like them better than Hill, I guess, just because you don't need all the value.
That
But
makes
like I
sense.
think, I mean, I think that all the guys from Milwaukee and then Collins and Young are just going to be like are going to be a lot of my highest owned guys today.
That makes a ton of sense. Guys, we are 3 games in. Adam, do you have anything else you want to touch on in this Atlanta Milwaukee game? Like, do
I
you
think it's
anticipate this
important.
is your biggest game?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's just important. Someone asked in Slack earlier today, kind of how they factor in correlation in situations like that, and I think the important thing is just making sure that your rules. You don't want to set rules that are too tight, especially on a 5 game slate, and like restrict the lineups that you're getting. But you just want to make sure that they make sense. Like, you obviously don't want Brooke Lopez and Robin Lopez, but like I set a rule so that I don't have more than two of Matthews, Hill, or the backup wings. I set a rule that I don't have more than one of Connaughton, Brown, or Corver. I don't know that I'll get to any of those guys, but I certainly wouldn't want more than one. So I think that it's more important just to kind of set rules and make sure that you're getting as much as you can out of that team than it is to worry about it too in depth.
Sounds good. I want to hit on this super chat that just came in from Shem. The 2v2 for a DK single entry GPP. You ready?
Yep.
Trae Young and George Hill, or Devonte Graham and Vooch?
I obviously like the Trae Young, George Hill side more as far as projection goes. If you're contrarian somewhere else in your lineup, then I would go with those guys. If you're just on massive chalk everywhere else, then the Vooch side obviously has upside, but I think it's a much lower probability play than Trae and Hill.
I agree. Perfect opportunity at this point for you guys to hit the like button. It's really weird to do like reads for the deeper dive. It's just so not any part of like the muscle memory for me. It comes so sparingly. So please hit the like button. Use the promo code Deeper Dive. Get yourself 50% off your first week with us. We've got tons of stuff going on right now. It's just a never-ending supply of content. We're getting ready to head into the new year. Big time plans coming for 2020. Seems like a perfect opportunity for you guys to get in the door now. NFL slowly wrapping up, but we're still going to have playoff content, that's for sure. NBA is in full swing. You don't miss us. I mean, unless I get knocked down with the flu, we're here constantly. And I had plenty of excellent help from all of my compatriots, so I greatly appreciate that. We had Jake on earlier for the NHL. Golf is getting ready to pick back up in big time coming up in 2020. We've got more soccer coming up tomorrow. Shout out to Man City for blowing that one today. Greatly appreciate it. You guys suck. MMA, betting. We've got everything, guys. And you can get access to all of it by using the promo code Deeper Dive. One big word, no space in between. You can get 50% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. And for some reason, instead of typing in 34 minutes for someone, I renamed my depth chart sheet to 34. I don't know how I do that sometimes, but it happens. Tyler Hitchcock, another super chat coming in, so I appreciate that. DK, Draymond, or Booker? Didn't get to either of those yet.
Yeah, but I prefer Booker.
As would I. I would prefer this game to not exist because it's like the least sexy fantasy game that you could ever think of. But Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers. Now, I like guys in this game, but they're just neither teams where like I'm ever excited about fantasy. The Heat are 4-point favorites at home. Malcolm Brogdon is a game time decision. So we will touch on that a little bit for Indiana. We've got Jimmy Butler in the 20s in ownership. Bam Adebayo, double digits, a little bit higher on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Dragic and Derek Jones both picking up a little bit of love on FanDuel. What are you trying to do with the Heat?
Not a whole lot. I think that Butler is the most appealing price tag. He's only 7,800 on DraftKings and has Ford eligibility, which is nice. 8,500 is fine on FanDuel. It would be better if he had Ford eligibility, obviously, but you should get around 35 minutes out of Butler. He's obviously a productive player. It's just that this game as a whole isn't really that appealing to me. Two slow teams, two quality defensive teams. Miami, outside of Justice Winslow, is basically at full strength. So you have Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic all competing for minutes, all competing for touches offensively. Bam is okay if you can get there, especially on FanDuel where he's a power forward. He's more appealing. But Butler is the one that stands out the most.
Yeah, that I agree with completely. Butler is the guy that I am looking at pretty heavily. Derek Jones is a guy that I'm always sort of looking at on FanDuel just because of his price and his position. He's only at 13% ownership. In a way, I kind of like that, but this doesn't strike me as the type of game where he would thrive.
Yeah, he concerns me here because for one, he's most of his points come from like defensive stats and then from transition dunks. Not the kind of game where a lot of that happens. He just should do better in faster paced games, but also the size of the Indiana front court. I think this is a game where potentially instead of like 8 minutes for Kelly Olynyk, you see like 15 or 16, and that you could see Jones go from 31, 32 minutes down to like 26, 27.
Good luck trying to predict those Kelly Olynyk minutes.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else in the NBA that whose minutes like waffle from top to bottom so aggressively and what seems like so randomly?
Not that I can think of, especially as far as talking about guys that are semi-competent players.
Right, like he'll play 28 minutes and then the next day it's just like, oh shit, did they take Kelly Olynyk out of the rotation?
Right.
And then like 2 days later, it's just like, oh, Kelly Olynyk started.
Right. Yeah. He'll play 28 like decent minutes. It's not like he plays 20. He'll go out and play like 28 terrible minutes, and it's like, oh, they just don't want to play. Like then it'll just be like, oh yeah, he's not playing today.
I mean, I guess that's just like a testament to Heat culture. Like nobody cares. It's just they all buy in. But
yeah, they have a really deep team. Spoelstra is willing to play matchups as opposed to being like Scott Brooks and insisting that no matter what's going on, you need to have X amount of guys on the floor at a specific time. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
If you could read the Kelly Olynyk tea leaves and know his minutes before the slate started, I mean, that might be enough edge to overcome the rake.
Yeah. Also, though, Kelly Olynyk tends to just do nothing when he's on the floor.
Depends how much I have of him.
Yeah. Like on average, he's productive when he's on the floor.
Yes.
But there is definitely a negative correlation between how much is in my lineups and his average production in those games.
I don't think that I can count a single time in my entire life where I had a lot of him and that played out well.
And if the only times where I have a lot of Kelly Olynyk and he does well are the times where it's like he's 60% owned and it was like the most obvious play on the slate.
Yeah. I think there was one, it feels like last year where like Whiteside was out. Both him and Bam were like 3,900 apiece. And it was like, yeah, I don't have a choice. I have to play all of these dudes. And they both went out and like smashed. And I think that might have been the only time where I ever actually felt good about having a lot of Kelly Olynyk. Normally it's like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to take the stand. I'm overweight. Kelly Olynyk plays 6.5 minutes in the first quarter and then doesn't see the floor again for the rest of the time because they wanted to play some guy that they just signed out of the crowd.
Right.
Thanks, Spo. Greatly appreciate it. Let's head over to Indiana where clearly better than John Collins, Domantas Sabonis is here for the Pacers at 8,300 on FanDuel, 8,100 on DK. He is in double digits in ownership on both sites, roughly 20% across them both. We're also getting TJ Warren into the teens on FanDuel as well. As of right now, I have Malcolm Brogdon projected as out. I know that Alex also has him projected as out. And I know, because I messaged you before the show started, you are also projecting Malcolm Brogdon as out. The more interesting thing is, what do you want to do with the Pacers with Malcolm Brogdon potentially out?
They're more, if Brogdon's out, they're more appealing on FanDuel. DraftKings pretty quickly raised pricing on everybody. So like a $4,700 Aaron Holiday on FanDuel would be an interesting option. And it's someone where with this game not starting until 8, you could get to some Aaron Holiday because he should have very little ownership if we don't have a Malcolm Brogdon update yet. And that could be a decent stand to take in tournaments, hoping that Brogdon sits and then you get, a point per minute or something from Holiday. But on DraftKings, the price on him is up, the price on Warren is up, the price on Lamb is up a bit. So not really interested in this matchup in those guys all that much. Sabonis is the one that I think really, regardless of Brogdon, is a good option, especially on FanDuel where he's only 8,300. Like I said, I have him a little bit behind Collins as far as value goes, but projected about the same. it's not that it's a good matchup, but he's just a productive player, really, no matter who is on the floor. He's playing 34, 35 minutes, regardless of if Brogdon's in or out. He's still getting backup center minutes. Goga's not in the rotation anymore, which means that you're getting a lot more productive minutes from Sabonis. So I think that he's pretty unaffected by Brogdon, and it's just a quality play either way.
Yeah, I see a lot of like very similar dudes relative to their salary. Like, clearly, Sabonis is the guy that can impact the slate, I think, the most. But you can talk me into a little bit of Miles Turner, and I'll be like, okay, that's fine. A little bit of Jeremy Lamb, yeah, that's fine. He's not that owned. Aaron Holiday, yeah, I think that's reasonable. Particularly on these are mostly FanDuel options just because of the prices. Aaron Holiday, 4,700. Yeah, if he really is 6% owned, that's probably a spot where I'm okay being north of that. TJ McConnell, even 3,800. Like, I see the value in quotes in some of these guys. It's just such a horrible DFS spot. It's wildly unappealing on both sides. So you up the triple overtime game where Edmund Sumner is the lock here on a 5-gamer. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, of course it was. I think we're probably gonna have to look at this on both sides. Favorite play in this game?
Sabonis. It's either Sabonis or Butler.
Okay.
I
Tricky, right?
Yeah, I think I would definitely say Sabonis on FanDuel because Butler's the same position as Middleton and DiVincenzo and other guys.
And then if you take Sabonis, you could just largely ignore John Collins, which makes your life easier.
Of course, yeah. On DraftKings though, where you can kind of just play guys wherever, and Butler's a little bit cheaper than Sabonis, I think I would give a slight edge to Butler.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on here?
No. I just really hope nobody from this game breaks the slate.
Well, at least on DraftKings, no one's really going to have enough ownership for it to matter. Like, if it's Jimmy Butler or it's Domantas Sabonis, you're not mad that they broke the slate because at least those guys have pulses. What you're really hoping is, like, I hope Jeremy Lamb doesn't take 24 shots.
Right. I'd be much more worried about someone from this game breaking it on FanDuel because they're much more favorably priced.
Yep. And because of the way that you need to roster people, like the guys especially the guys from the Pacers are so much more viable as like the second, like your small forward 2 or your shooting guard 2 or something.
But the flip side of that is I would have more exposure to this game on FanDuel.
Also true. Final game to talk about now, and then we'll try to sum up a little bit of positional stuff at the end. Golden State Warriors, Phoenix Suns. Warriors 110.5 implied total. Suns 114. So Suns 3.5-point favorites in Golden State. News for Golden State just came out recently. Eric Pascal is out. Kai Bowman is available. We've got like a pretty wide net cast for ownership. Most chalky player in the Golden State side is $4,500 Willie Cauley-Stein on DraftKings. We have him at 31% ownership. D'Angelo Russell up in the 20s. Dre, Burks, Damian Lee, Glenn Robinson all getting love. What do you want to do with the Warriors tonight? And does the news of Pascal being out and Bowman being in, does that change anything for you?
It doesn't change much. I had them both projected in. I only have 15 minutes going to Pascal, so now obviously I'll have 0. But I think it helps to solidify the minutes for other guys more than it gives anyone a specific boost. Yeah. Cauley-Stein, I think, is clearly underpriced on DraftKings. He's 6,100 on FanDuel, which I think is okay, but nowhere near the value that he is on DraftKings. He's playing more minutes lately. I have him projected for 30 here. Phoenix has been the 3rd fastest team in the league over the last month. They've been terrible defensively. So just a really, really obviously good spot for Cauley-Stein. You get question marks about the minutes for guys like Burks, Robinson, Lee. Those guys' minutes can kind of fluctuate. We saw like 37 minutes from Robinson last game, 31 or 32 from Lee in his huge game. Burks got the short end of the stick, played like 24. I have 32 going to Lee, 34 going to Robinson, 30 going to Burks. So I think that they're all they're all reasonable plays. Robinson's really favorably priced on DraftKings, but he's also the least productive out of the group. Damian Lee's really favorably priced on Yahoo, so I would go right back to him. Obviously, not expecting another 15 rebound effort though.
I don't know what to do with these dudes. I thought I was going to get a little bit more Willie Cauley-Stein this morning. I'm starting to think that I'm a little bit less interested on DraftKings, although I certainly understand why it's happening. Burke's probably the guy that stands out most to me, at least on FanDuel. Not sure. I'm sort of with you in that, like, I don't expect Pascal or Kai Bowman to really matter all that much. I had Bowman in, I had Pascal in as well, same as you. It's something that I need to make a little bit of a change for. I'm going to have a lot of Golden State. It's just like not a lot of any individual player.
Right.
It's
yeah,
not
I mean,
fun
I think
because this is a great spot to like have a lot of people.
yeah, it's site dependent for me. Like on FanDuel, I don't know that I would have tons of any one individual player because D'Angelo Russell is a shooting guard. He's relatively expensive. Cauley Stein's more expensive. On DraftKings, I'm going to have tons of Cauley Stein. I'm going to have tons of D'Angelo Russell.
Okay. Why do you think Willie Cauley-Stein is playing bigger minutes now?
Healthy. Kerr's running a tighter rotation. Spellman's not in the rotation.
Right, like why would they be running a tighter rotation now? This is a team that they had like no bodies, and they were like, "Hey, buddy, we need you to only play 24 minutes."
Yeah, I'm assuming
like, let
he's
it rip,
just
man. We
healthier
still
now.
suck.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a health thing.
Interesting. Wish we would have known about that earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean that's just my guess is that they kind of are bringing him along slowly, but also no Looney and then not giving Spellman minutes.
That's a good point. Hawks will start Young, Herder, Hunter, Collins, Fernando. Jabari Parker ruled out.
Yep, Alex Len out also.
Yeah. Jabari Parker being out mean anything to you?
I had projected him out.
Yeah. Well, then there you go. So the answer is no.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously helps to solidify Collins, I would think, because his backup just got ruled out.
Certainly does.
Yeah. So, I mean, I gave minutes to Vince Carter. I gave minutes to DeAndre Bembry. But Parker wasn't playing a ton of minutes anymore anyway.
Right. Surprised to see him removed from the rotation. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. He's Jabari Parker. And it doesn't really make anybody better ever, unfortunately. Let's head over to the Phoenix side quickly. Lots of ownership coming in to 4 guys and 4 guys only. Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre, Aaron Baines. I'm just going to throw it straight to you. What are the best options? What do you want to do with Phoenix? Rank the guys, however you want to handle it. Talk to me about the Suns.
So Baines is the one that stands out on all sites. He's played 26, 32, and 30 minutes over his last 3 games. Clearly, he's not being limited anymore after they brought him back slowly from his injury. It's Golden State's not as great a matchup now as it was earlier in the year. Over the last month, they're 20th in pace. They're 12th in defensive rating. Earlier this year, they were worse than the Wizards defensively, and they were playing at a top 10 pace. So it's not the same team, but it is still a decent matchup. And most importantly, Baines is 4,100 on FanDuel. He's I think 4,800 on DraftKings. So the salary really hasn't caught up with how many minutes he's playing now. He hasn't been great in recent games, but for the season, he's played between 200 and 300 minutes with Rubio and Booker on the floor. He's averaged 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. So it's not like we're talking about an unproductive player. It's not like it's a terrible matchup against Golden State, and he's really cheap. Kelly Oubre stands out on FanDuel because small forward is a weak position. Kelly Oubre is only $1,600, should play around 36 minutes. He's between a 0.9 and 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. So just a really, really good value on FanDuel. Whereas on DraftKings, he's fine, but he's not a priority for me. Devin Booker's price is a joke on all sites, 6,900 on FanDuel and on DraftKings. On one hand, I think that it's kind of getting overstated because like it's crazy that Devin Booker's 6,900. It's worth mentioning that he's averaging less than a fantasy point per minute this year with Rubio on the floor, and they're not staggering his minutes with Rubio. So he's going to play almost all of his minutes with Ricky Rubio, and he hasn't been very productive. So that's worth mentioning. But at the same time, he should play around 36 minutes. He still has a high ceiling, and his median projection is still good for his salary. So I think maybe he ends up a little bit overowned, but it's not like it's one of those plays where you look at it and you're confident that he's not going to do well because he is very clearly underpriced. I think that Rubio is underpriced as well. Just doesn't play quite as many minutes as Booker and is a little bit more expensive.
The fact that the fact that Devin Booker is 6,900 on FanDuel and DraftKings today, and he is my fourth favorite option from the Suns. And there aren't like there's not like six other guys out, and I'm getting like, Ty Jerome at minimum salary or something. I never would have expected that, but
he's my third favorite
reasonable.
guy from Phoenix on FanDuel. He's my second favorite on DraftKings.
Yeah, I have him. The gap between Rubio, Booker, and Oubre for me on DK is very, very minimal. We're talking about like a 0.01% type stuff.
Yeah.
But just like if I had to straight line rank them, just the way that it would be, he would be fourth. And then I would look at his price and it would be 6,900, and I'd be like, "Wow, you're stupid. What are you doing here?" But it's a little bit of where the pricing is. It's a little bit of positionality, and just this is like Kelly Oubre at 6,100 is probably just a better play, specifically on FanDuel. Like that's just too low of a price given the amount of minutes he's out there. And then
it's an opportunity cost thing for me between Oubre and Booker on FanDuel. Like why I prefer Oubre.
I mean, it's Tobias Harris is like the most expensive small forward today on FanDuel at 7,100. That is craziness.
Do you have any interest in Kaminsky?
I hate that you're asking. Wouldn't shock you, right? $3,700 on FanDuel, $3,900 on DraftKings. By all accounts,
I think it's a great. Go ahead.
Like, he's obviously going to be playing, I would imagine, every center minute that Aaron Baines does not play. How often have they been running them alongside each other?
They're not.
Not at all? Okay.
Huh.
I didn't know if it was like, 2 minutes every other game or something like that.
At least not that I've noticed. I'm pretty sure it's just been that it's been them playing center. The bigger question has been for a time, Saric was taking center minutes from Kaminsky as well. But now Saric is not even playing that many power forward minutes. So,
look, what would happen if you projected Frank Kaminsky right now for 24 minutes?
On FanDuel, he would be my second best play from Phoenix.
How often do you think that Frank Kaminsky? How many minutes do you have him projected for?
I have him at 20.
So do I. For him to pick up an additional 4 minutes is not an outlandish statement whatsoever.
Right.
That happens a very non-negligible amount of times.
The reason I think he's so interesting is it's not like you're just looking at this guy and saying, okay, he's cheap, he could play a few more minutes. Like that's the case for a lot of backups on a lot of teams. The reason he's so interesting is that he negatively correlates with Aaron Baines, who is one of the most popular players on all sites. He's like the sixth highest owned guy on DraftKings. I don't have FanDuel ownership in front of me, but I assume he's up there too.
He's not.
What?
18.
Okay, that's crazy.
But I didn't want you to get into this one, and then
Yeah. Okay. Then I mean we can cater it to DraftKings.
Actually,
then. But
we got an ownership update 12 minutes ago. Let me make sure that I'm not talking out of my ass, because let's be clear here, it's happened from time to time. Oubre now the chalk, even more aggressively than before at 45.7. Aaron Baines 27%. There you go.
Okay. So either way, the point here and the thought process goes beyond just talking about Kaminsky and Baines specifically, because obviously it extends to other slates where you have the situation. But in NBA, like the easiest spot to leverage against chalk is at the center position when you have two guys that combine for 48 minutes. Because if Baines gets in foul trouble, if Baines plays poorly, if Kaminsky plays well, if any number of things happen and Kaminsky gets more minutes or Baines gets less minutes, it's just kind of like a sliding scale with those guys.
Yep.
And so if nobody's going to play Kaminsky and everybody's going to play Baines on a smaller slate like this, there's definitely some merit to getting to Kaminsky and just hoping that variance happens and that Kaminsky that they go 24-24 or Kaminsky plays even more than that or something. It's just an easy way to leverage against the field, because not only are you taking a stand on a low-owned guy, but if he does well, the popular guy necessarily is doing worse.
I think I might make a slight switch, maybe try to go like 27-21 or 26-22 not going to stop me from getting to Aaron Baines at 4,100 on FanDuel, but it certainly might unlock a little bit more Frank Kaminsky at what is essentially zero ownership. Yep. Not to mention, like, if you said this, my apologies. I was doing the normal thing that we do when the other person's talking, which is ignore it completely. Yep. It's not like Aaron Baines is like the epitome of health.
Right. No, that's true too. I think that the median outcome is that Baines plays 30 and Kaminsky plays 18, but or 28-20 or whatever. But yeah. It's not like Phoenix has never run a weird rotation before. What's up, Emac?
Going on, Emac. Just gonna go ahead and remove Emac here for a second. Later on, my dude. Got it. I've been off for a couple days, guys. I forgot about breakout rooms. My apologies.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a high probability thing. It's just it's more profitable if you're going to take a stand on like a random backup like that. It's more profitable to be doing it with someone that negatively correlates to a popular play than to just be doing it with some random dude.
I like it. Well, as you can see, EMAC coming up next on Live Before Lock with Chris Spags. We played a little switcherooski for this one today. So let's sum it up since EMAC is raring to go. Adam, who are your favorite plays on DraftKings for today?
You'd think I would have been ready for that question.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, Middleton, Ilyasova. Those were the easy ones. Middleton, Ilyasova, DiVincenzo, Russell, Cauley-Stein, Baines, Collins, Trey.
I will hit you guys with my FanDuels. George Hill, Chris Paul, Ricky Rubio. That's at point guard. Shooting guard, Chris Middleton with the biggest of bullets, Dante DiVincenzo. Slightly smaller caliber bullet, but that bullet nonetheless. Kevin Herter as well, but completely different level. Kelly Oubre at small forward, and then shrug your shoulders because everybody else is projected for like 15% ownership. Ersan Ilyasova at power forward should be the no-brainerest of no-brainers on FanDuel. Flat minimum. What else can you possibly do? Only other guy that I would actually be super interested in would be Sabonis at 8,300. And then at center, Brook Lopez and Aaron Baines are probably the guys that stand out most to me. But I think that there's going to be plenty of money to go around to get all the way up to Joel Embiid. There we go. 5 games up, 5 games down. The deeper dive is complete. Thank you very much to Yahoo Sports for being our presenting sponsor. Please go check out EMAC's Cash Building Blocks article so that you can, 1, learn about this slate, and 2, sign up and become a baller yourself. Get them YSRPs. Promo code Deeper Dive. If you want to sign up at Awesemo.com, get yourself Awesemo Plus for 50% off on your first week. We've got Chris Spags and EMAC coming up immediately after this. Adam, anything else?
Nope.
There it is, guys. Best of luck tonight. Enjoy your weekend. We will talk to you again later.
everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com live before lock show. Got ourselves a 5-game NBA slate where the lack of Giannis is going to change everything in our lives, but we'll talk about that over the course of the next hour. I'm Chris Spags, joined again for the third time in a week. He can't stay awake. He can't get enough of me. Your old pal Emac is back. He can't get away from the show, popping in earlier. How are you doing, Emac?
I'm doing good. Clearly, I'm ready to go here on a Friday. I've got all my hockey lineups set up, which means we'll get some line changes or late news. They are starting again today after a few days off over Christmas. I see we just officially got notification that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be out tonight, so I drafted him on draft a few times today, so now I need to replace him. And we've got lineups. So I've got my tiers shell lineup in, and I'm going to build my NBA one on the stream because, Chris, after last night, I can't skip the first game and take care of the rest. There's not many games after the first lock time tonight, so I have to actually build my lineups.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are going to have to not ignore the actually 2 games going on earlier tonight. One of them, I guess you can't ignore, possibly with Philadelphia and Orlando, but we'll talk about it as we go. But of course, regardless of EMAC's lineup status, it is in fact a show that is sponsored by Fantasy Draft. And EMAC loves building lineups on there. So do I. So does Josh. So do a lot of the guys on here. Shit My Money is one big money. Awesemo. Fantasy Draft does a great job for all the players out there because they're not charging you rake. And that's something that's going to help you out a lot when you're building your bankroll as a DFS player. Let's go to fantasydraft.com right now and use that promo code Awesemo. I believe the Hooters main event is still going on for week 17, the largest rake-free DFS tournament you will find in the industry. So check it out. If not, check out whatever else they have going on there. There's a lot going on in Fantasy Draft, including the NBA. But don't pay rake. Go use Fantasy Draft and use that promo code Awesemo to try start your free 7-day trial on there. And also, right now we have a giveaway going on our @Awesemo_com Twitter handle for our NHL Pass, which we don't do enough of a good job here cross-promoting across all the shows. But Jake Hari, a guy I do a lot of MLB shows with, if you follow us during that season, a very smart hockey player. EMAC can testify in a second to that, but does a great job with our NHL product and our projections. And right now you can win a free pass for the rest of the NFL season, or the NHL season, excuse me. If you go right now to the pin tweet on @Awesemo_com, all you have to do is guess which 2 teams scored the least amount of goals on tonight's NHL slate. So pick anybody you want. It's a random draw, but go there right now. Check out the pin tweet and go make some money with Jake Hari because EMAC, give the people a little vote of confidence here because I know you in NHL, maybe not the biggest hockey fan, but you've done a good job with NHL DFS.
Oh, absolutely. I'm running about a 15% ROI right now since the beginning of the season. I literally play every slate, and I like playing in the smaller leagues and such. I am not playing in the larger contests because now it's at the same lock time as basketball. It gets to be a little tricky to do that, but I will say it's been a lot of fun. Our projections and Alex's line rankings are the 2 best kept secrets that we have here at Awesemo. And I think that you guys should dabble in a little NHL prior to the NBA All-Star break because that's like 6 weeks away still. It's a long time, Chris.
Look, honestly, I can say as somebody who does not play a ton of NHL and really doesn't have the bandwidth to think about any other sports besides the ones that we cover here with NFL and NBA going on, but I'm definitely envious of the amount of success I've seen from people over NHL, and it's really just been as simple as following Jake's projections, as well as the ownership projections we have and all that content. So go check out that pin tweet. It is a good deal there. And honestly, playing some of these fringe sports, I know we all love NBA, we all love the NFL, but playing some of the sports that are getting a little bit less love out there can be a positive way to help build your bankroll for DFS. All right, EMAC, we got an important situation here. Is Oubre out? Skylar Newcomb asking that. That is not the important information, but
yeah. So Oubre has a sore groin. He is expected to play.
All?
He is probable, but he is still carrying the questionable tag, depending on which site you're looking at. Because remember, NBA they don't officially have a probable or a doubtful designation like NFL does.
Yes, and yeah, his groin seems like it'll be fine to go for today. I believe he went through shoot around, at least so that as was checking stuff earlier about him just to make sure there's nothing weird. But yeah, I don't know.
We definitely want to keep an eye on it, but as far as we know, he's expected to play from everything that we've seen.
So let's talk about the key issue here, EMAC. Giannis officially out. Going to be a situation here going into Atlanta. A really nice matchup for anybody who's played Atlanta recently. They play with good pace. They play with bad defense. 2 things that we always like to target. Did work out well for Detroit yesterday. In fact, too well. Some could say with that game, but a similar spot here for Milwaukee. Their Vegas totals come down a little bit. They're at 124.3 earlier today. They've come down 3 points to 121.3 implied total from Vegas. But I really love all these plays. One guy I guess I got a little bit away from was Brook Lopez. I thought he looked better earlier in the day, but his splits with Middleton, they're not the biggest ones for this year. But going back to last year, Middleton doesn't work great with Lopez, so I kind of got away from that play. I think there's some ways to differentiate at center. But EMAC, I love all the Bucks. I have Chris Middleton. I have George Hill at a pretty good amount of volume. I have Dante DiVincenzo. I have less Wesley Matthews, but I don't hate it conceptually. So what are you doing with the Bucks? Who do you have the most of? And obviously Ersan going to be the chalk play of the day as a near minimum price guy or minimum price on FanDuel, and a guy who should pick up the start today with Giannis out.
Yeah, Middleton's going to be probably my highest player. I think it's just too good of a situation to avoid. And sometimes you just want to embrace the chalk. My thinking is, even though there are just 10 teams in our player pool, there are enough other places where we can differentiate, and I'm looking to do that. The reason I like Middleton is, one, he is a secondary ball handler. We know he's a scorer as well, so this is a nice situation for him to be there without Giannis, and again, without Eric Bledsoe. That makes a fair difference as well. And this is going to be a relatively up-tempo pace against Atlanta, and I don't think there's any reason to go elsewhere. I agree with you. I do have some trepidation there for Lopez, but I think he is – I'll be interested to see as we get a little closer to lock if that ends up being Baines, who was kind of my guy earlier today, and I'm still comfortable with him. I'm sort of hoping Lopez outpaces him, but now we have choices. So that's a nice thing. And then I think you're absolutely right with Hill and DiVincenzo. They'll pick up some additional duties here. The Bucks do play again tomorrow. It would not be a shocker if George Hill just plays his normal minutes, and if they're winning, he doesn't get blowout run. It wouldn't surprise me if Dante DiVincenzo doesn't either, and they go deeper into the bench. That's just something to consider here, and it just depends. But as we've said many times, where can you predict the blowouts? All of a sudden, this game should be a little bit closer without Giannis. Atlanta's been very spirited at home for the last couple seasons, and they've got phenomenal talent with Collins back. He missed 25 games, so we're thinking of just the Trae Young Atlanta Hawks, not the Trae Young and another really good young developing talent. Which makes a lot of difference there. So I really like this game. Those are the key players I'm looking at from each of the sides. And then I would probably add in Kevin Huerter as well from the Atlanta side. His price has come up just a little bit, but he should see additional ball handling duties, etc. So I think those are some nice plays and less defense. The one thing it boosts Trae Young. Now we don't have a ton of people to, and I'll let you get a word in edgewise here, Chris, but we don't have a ton of people to spend on tonight. Trae Young is one of them. I think a lot of people will end up there. I think he's in a perfectly good matchup without having Giannis. If he gets off on a hot streak, you know what they're going to say? Giannis, go slow him down, because he's one of those guys. He's a Kawhi Leonard type. He can guard anybody. That's not there tonight. So, hey, if the shot is falling, we could see a 60 fantasy point outing tonight from Trae Young, which is very exciting.
Yeah, the rim defense just gets a little bit weaker without Giannis in there. Obviously, a lengthy player is going to take up a lot of space, too, just being able to cover the ground that he does and cut off lanes to the rim. So I would certainly play into what Trae Young does best. But, Milwaukee's defense still is pretty good, even without Bledsoe and Giannis out there. I don't think, obviously not on the same level, not even close to the same level, but still a pretty high level defense. I would compare it to Toronto, how they played this year. Siakam was out of the lineup. They're a little bit looser, but they're still pretty fundamentally sound, still have a good scheme. All those things look good. But I do think Atlanta, it's gotten a little bit less appealing with the Milwaukee value that's opened up, particularly Ersan, who I want to address one fast thing in the YouTube chat. People talking about how he's going to be played on FanDuel at a high volume where he's minimum price and that he has like 20 fantasy point upside. He literally just a couple weeks ago with Giannis out had 37 fantasy points against New Orleans, who is a very comparable matchup to this Atlanta matchup. Team that plays with decent pace in line with the Bucks, as well as poor defense. So Ersan doesn't get there today. That can happen. But on FanDuel in particular, at the minimum price, I just don't see how you don't go. If you don't want to go 100% Ersan, I get it. But I don't see why you wouldn't come close to that, because he's so cheap and he's not going to kill you. But EMAC, on FanDuel in particular, where it's minimum price, would you see any reason at all to move away from Ersan? Because honestly, I just don't.
No, and I think when you're looking at those game logs, you have to decide is what's real or what's not. I think this is one where they're just going to turn him loose. Some of those other ones, they didn't need him. Ersan, every day he's a little bit older. He's not a young guy anymore. And if you go look at his game, his stops throughout his career, he's been all over the place. So I think there is some warranted concern here. But I figure that if there's a good chance he doesn't play tomorrow. So what's stopping him from 20 or 25 minutes tonight? So I think that's a different way of looking at it. Tomorrow, the Milwaukee's at home against Orlando. Orlando will also be on. Yeah, Orlando will be on a back-to-back because they're in Philly tonight. So you've got a decent situation shaping up for Milwaukee tomorrow where they're going to play their key guys. I would guess their bench guys may not play as much. So therefore, I would think they could turn things over to them tonight like Connaughton and some of those other guys if they're able to get a 15 or so point lead. But as we mentioned, if it's going to be close, Ersan's going to be one of the guys that's out there.
He's also, I mean, look, we don't, I know EMAC, you in particular do not enjoy the revenge game, but it is a return spot for Ersan, who did leave Atlanta with some degree of enmity too. And he actually did have a couple of blow up games against them over the last.
How did I forget he played for Atlanta?
Yeah, that was actually when I was first starting to play.
Was that one of the years where he played for like 3 teams because he just kept getting cut / traded?
That was the year he ended up on Philly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The Philly. Yeah, he was everywhere. That was okay.
Yeah, but he hated Atlanta for that. Because he didn't want to leave.
Well, you leave those strip clubs. Come on.
Of course, and all the kielbasa and delicious cheese. I'm sure he was loving that. Actually, no, that would be the Milwaukee. Never mind. But the strip clubs.
So this is Ersan's 12th season. He is 32.
How many teams has he played for? He's got to have played for 8.
He played 7 years for Milwaukee to start his career. 1 year in Detroit. And that year he also spent time in Orlando, so double revenge for him. He's played, let's just say he's played for the Eastern Conference. He played for Atlanta, Philly, OKC, a second stint with Atlanta. That was either Philly or Atlanta he played for twice, and then back to Milwaukee. So at some point he's going to be a Washington Wizard and complete the commemorative set of jerseys.
I mean, look, you got to keep racking them up at a certain point. Nice collectible room you can accumulate.
Yeah, Toronto, perhaps. He seems like an international guy. There you go.
Clearly his heart's in Milwaukee now, so that's good for him. But look, I think right now, even just looking at the YouTube chat, people are going to keep trying to poke holes in this play because I don't know what it is. It's like an abused kind of complex that we all have with DFS players where it's like, oh, this guy, it's too easy. It's like this. Sometimes just take the guy in the good spot. It's a 21% usage rate in core time with Chris Middleton, without Giannis and without Eric Bledsoe. Like, he's involved in the offense. He rebounds well. It's a pace-up spot against the bad defense. Just all the check marks are there. So if you want to overthink it, feel free and you can donate. But and if you want to pivot away because there's great power forward plays, that's a logical thing. If you want to say like, hey, I'll pay up a power forward and center on DraftKings across all the spots that Ersan be eligible for, yeah, it's a move to get away from them in tournaments. But for the most part, you just have to take a guy who's that cheap. If you're 5K, it's a different story. At 3,300 and the flat minimum on FanDuel, it's just kind of a simple one.
All right, Jeffrey Fink, come on, you're shortchanging Ersan by 50% of his games in Oklahoma City. He played 3, not 2. 3. That's 50% more than you were giving him credit for. Come on.
All right, let's keep going through to the Atlanta side. It's not happening today. I'm not taking the bait on people. Like, I know we don't talk revenge games aren't a data point. We say that here. You don't say that in the YouTube chat. It's just a thing to point out as part of the narrative.
No, we don't say that anymore. It's remember me games and familiar with the shooting backdrop.
Your old pal with the rebranding of revenge games. Revenge is much sexier, and also Revenge, a great show that left ABC too early. Emily Van Camp, I miss seeing on my TV on a regular basis, so bring that back. Atlanta side though, EMAC, John Collins to me looks like a very strong play. And I was starting to say earlier, like I did like the Atlanta side a bit more before the Milwaukee guys opened up with no Giannis, because I do think Hunter and Herter in particular can shoot Atlanta into this game in a meaningful way. Certainly still the case without Giannis out there, but I like the guys more. I was willing to pay their slightly elevated prices a bit more. But what are you getting on Atlanta side? Because Smee Collins looks like a very strong play. He'll be chalky. I did find money to get to Trae Young as well for the reasons we outlined in the beginning of the show. What are you getting on Atlanta side?
Those guys I'll try. We'll see what happens to be over the field. I haven't done my crunches yet. And then with Herter, I think I will as well. I like a bunch of guys in the later games. So I'm sort of recalibrating with all of this news here, but those would be the main guys. I am not a fan of Hunter, not a fan of Bembry, not a fan of those guys, but there is no Jabari Parker. I don't know if Alex Len is ruled out or if he's still doubtful, but he's probably not going to play. So there are available minutes there for some of these ne'er-do-wells of the Atlanta, I almost said Falcons, Atlanta Hawks. So just scrolling here. Reddish, I think, at 44,000 even is reasonable. And Hunter, Let's look at his game log. So he's put up 30 in 3 of his last 6, 20 in the other 2. He's starting. He's getting. It's all about the shot attempts for him. 19, 12, 6. That 6 was a bad game. He scored 7.5 points. There's your downside. But 19, 10, 16, 9, 11, 9, 14, 15. He's favorably priced. I'm okay with. I will not cut my field in half of Hunter like I was going to.
So Hunter's been good. He took a lot of Jabari Parker. Like when Parker got squeezed out, it was largely because Hunter was a more reliable game-to-game player version of Parker. So I definitely don't mind Hunter here. And people too in the YouTube chat right now seem to be confused about what Milwaukee does defensively. They give up a lot of threes deliberately. They like to make bad shooters shoot threes. So I would think today they're going to probably let Collins shoot a lot from 3 because he does show a penchant to just be open and want to take those shots. And he's actually shot pretty well. A very limited 2019 sample size, but he shot 47% from the floor from 3, which surprised me that he's been that good. But they don't want Trae Young shooting 3. So if you're thinking like, oh, they give up a lot of threes, Trae's just going to jack it. Like Trae may just shoot a lot because that's what he does, but they're going to cover him tightly. They'll let Hunter, Herter, and Collins in particular shoot all he wants from deep.
No, that's a good call out. Yes, that's a good call out.
So how are you feeling about Collins? Do you feel like he's worth the chalky play status?
Yes. I really think he is. I mean, he was out for a suspension. This wasn't an injury. He's decent minutes his last 2 games. That's going to keep trending up. This is a good matchup for him. Nobody really likes to rebound for Milwaukee because it's not Brolo. Brolo barely plays, although we may see him a little more tonight. And then, he's better than Ersan, and I'm fine with it's very concentrated from this game, in my opinion. I think if you want to look for your differentiation on the other games, you don't go with Baines. You don't go with Kelly Oubre. You don't go with Booker. Those are the people that you're going to want to avoid if you're going to take the chalk on this one. If you're in your main lineup or your cash game lineup, play the heavy chalk guys from those 2 games would be my recommendation.
Yep. All right. So that checks out. Let's move through some of the higher owned plays because I do think there's one construction that to me jumps out that I imagine people are going to be doing a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of DraftKings lineups tonight with D'Angelo Russell and Devin Booker in the backcourt. Booker's price is down. He's had a couple of really bad shooting games in a row since he went out with that forearm injury, though he apparently has been improving. He did take the sleeve off last game. So the hope is that he'll be back on track today, but his price is low enough. It's 6,900 on DK where, and he's also comparably cheap on FanDuel, also 6,900, but the ownership isn't going to be there quite as much. So let's talk about these 2 guys one by one. Booker, Emac, how are you feeling about him? I don't mind him, but I do think it's more because of the spot against Golden State. I think really in this offense, Rubio, and Oubre are basically the same player in terms of the opportunity they have. But at his price, I just don't mind Booker in this matchup.
I'm okay with it. Ricky Rubio is really cutting into him. Assuming it's Ricky Rubio that's really cutting into Kelly Oubre as well. We're not seeing either Booker or Oubre do what they were doing down the stretch last year. The price is favorable. He's averaging about 1 fantasy point per minute. Booker, this is. So you can say the same thing with Oubre. Oubre over, I don't know, like his last, let me look at my notes. Switching to Oubre because I want to talk about these guys together because I kind of have the same outlook on both of them. So Oubre was a guy I wrote up as risky value. In his 30 games this season, he has topped 40 fantasy points 7 times. So it's about 1 in 4. He's gone below 24 points 5 times. He has averaged in those games where he was above 40 fantasy points, just 45 fantasy points. My whole point with Oubre is there's just not the upside with him right now. And I think he is someone to let the other players get to, because even if he gets a fantasy point per minute, which is what he's doing this season, and he plays 35 minutes, he's not going to kill you. There are better ways to go about this one. I feel very similarly to Devin Booker. The one thing you want to remember about Golden State is this is not the complete defensive disaster that it was when literally everybody was hurt. They are better. They're not awesome by any stretch, but they are better. It's like there is an actual, now it's chairs with somebody standing on it holding a broom as opposed to nothing on defense. So it's a little bit better. But it's not the same crush spot. Shit, they beat Houston. Come on. How do you do that if you don't have good defense? They figured out a way to scheme and get it done against Harden. So
a little gimmicky,
they're tougher. They're tougher than we thought at this point. or tougher than they have been in recent games now that everybody's mobile. So I am not, and I'm one that really, really likes Phoenix a lot. I like the players. They're fun to watch for fantasy. They don't play defense. It's fun to take players against them, etc. I'm really not fired up about Oubre. I like from this game Aaron Baines a lot still. And here's why I like him. And I also like Willie Cauley-Stein. But Aaron Baines is so he had two different injuries that basically cost him 3 weeks. He had where's my notes? He had a left calf injury and a right hip injury, and he played one game in the interim for those. Since he's been back, his minutes have been trending up. He started the last three games, so I think we're going to see him at 30, 35 minutes. All his upside comes with blocks at this point. He hasn't had any or he's had 6 in his last 12 games. And I think in that stretch, he's got only blocks in 3 of those 12 games, but he can get them. So that's somebody I really, really like. I would prefer him over the other two from a point per dollar. I would also prefer Ricky Rubio, just because I'm not hearing him talked about as much or have seen him mentioned as much. And I think he is, for me, similarly priced and a relatively equal play to Booker. So if you get the better or lesser ownership on Rubio, that would be the guy to go to. I think their ceilings are essentially equal.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that.
When
overall.
they're playing together. If there was no Rubio, this is an entirely different story, and we're talking how nice 69,000 is or 6,900 is for Booker. But this is the context of 10 teams and player.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the thing for me with Booker is just the price is low enough, and he's been due for positive regression on his shot. The forearm thing, you need a forearm to shoot, even if it's whatever arm it's on, you need a forearm to shoot and help that process along. And, Booker just healing, having a couple days off. They played last time 4 days ago now. So you would hope a forearm can heal enough in that time frame. It's not, it wasn't a lengthy outage for him. So that would be the reasons I don't mind Booker. And I do have Booker projected as a better play relative to his salary than Rubio is. But I agree. I just think for the most part, Oubre, Booker, and Rubio in this offense, when they're all in there together, just the guys who are going to be the cheapest or the guys who are going to be the less owned are often going to be as valuable because they have a very similar opportunity each game. And the Baines sake too, Baines is one of the better values on the slate according to Alex's projections. Of course, if you want the Osmo projections for yourself, use that promo code LiveBeforeLock at osmo.com/join to get half off of your first week. But Baines has looked like a solid play all day. The ownership looks fine to me. I think the one thing that does concern me a little bit with playing Baines, as I talking about the lineup constructions again, I think people will play him and Willie Cauley-Stein together a good amount today. So if you talk about the chalk plays right now, it looks to me like 4 of the spots here are going to be very highly owned are going to be Willie Cauley-Stein with Baines and then Russell and Booker in the backcourt. So if you want to deviate from those 4 spots, I think that's one construction that's going to be very popular tonight on DraftKings. But I don't mind Baines and I don't mind Willie Cauley-Stein as center plays. Here's a question for you, Emac. How are you handling center? Because you like Baines. I'm going to assume you might like Willie too as value, but maybe not. So correct me if you don't. But what are you doing there? Because I like Steven Adams quite a bit. He gets 1.2 fantasy points without Gallo, and it's a really good spot against Charlotte, the second best center matchup in the league.
So here's the other fun part, and this is where I'm going to drop this in the chat. So this is the cash game building blocks article. This usually comes out around lunchtime because I like to have a fighting chance to get us some good information here. But generally, the players that we talk about in this article series are going to be a solid value plays throughout the evening. Now, better ones may appear, but these guys aren't going to lose their upside. They're just maybe better plays. So within this one, I talked a lot about Nerlens Noel and Steven Adams. Do you know how many minutes Nerlens Noel and Steven Adams have played together this season?
I think it's actually 0 because I was looking.
It is 0. Come on, trick questions. We only ask each other trick questions here, Chris.
It could have been a fun one where it was like 1, and then I would have been wrong. I would have been right by Price is Right rules, but not right overall.
Yes, that would have been Jared Allen and I think Ed Davis 3 seasons ago. I think they had like 3 minutes together, and it was some sort of both of them being put in for foul shooting rebounding purposes or something like that. But so they have not played together yet. And I looked at this on 2 different sites so I could make sure that this in fact was correct, because I wanted to talk about the rule setting it up that I only will play one of them. And on Fantasy Cruncher, you can set up these rules that pre-populate each day. You just have to ask for them to come up. when these teams play. So I've gone in and set that one up because I like both these guys. Now, Noel is power forward over there on FanDuel. I think that's perfectly fine. And there's your alternative to go away from Ersan Ilyasova. On DraftKings and Yahoo and Fantasy Draft, we have the utility spot. So we can play 2 centers if we would like. I'm waiting for this next run of popularity to see where those 2 come out. But they will be the ones that those 2 Baines and then Cauley Stein, I think are going to be my foremost owned centers today, and we'll have to see where that goes because I'm willing to forego Brooke Lopez as the other one. You'd notice I did not mention Joel Embiid. I did not mention Nikolai Vucevic. There are other options out there, but those are the guys I kind of like.
So you're not getting to Adams at all?
No, I'm saying he's one of the 4.
Oh, okay, good. I was going to say, yeah.
No, the teammates and then the 2 guys in the other game. Oh, I guess there's 5. No, 2 guys in the other game. Yeah. Willie Cauley-Stein, Baines, whose name I keep forgetting, and then Adams and Noel. But Adams and Noel, you only want to play one on your lineup.
Yeah, Noel, I mean, does still, even in his minutes that he gets, I think, if he didn't get there against Memphis, I guess Memphis is pace, but they do have some decent interior, so maybe that's a reason why. But Noel can certainly get there in his minutes, even just off the bench. Like, I don't think you need that value today, but yesterday I did play a little bit of Noel just because he was 4K flat on DraftKings. And, it's certainly possible he earns a few more minutes if Adams has foul trouble. But today it looks like Adams isn't going to be terribly highly owned, at least in the last run of ownership. We'll see if that changes. If he's at 13%, though, I will definitely, I'm significantly above that right now, and I will stay significantly above it because it looks like the chalk right now is going to be Willie and Aaron Baines.
Sorry, back to back. So Adams has done 3 this year, and he's averaging 26.5 minutes he's averaging 27.5 in normal games. So it's really not been that much of a difference. Last night he played 27.5 minutes. They did lose handily to Memphis. That was a winnable game. Tonight's a winnable game. They need to quit donking these off or they're going to be out of the Western Conference picture.
They don't want to win. They were 10 points down with a minute and a half left. And he just
do you think they're tanking already?
A little bit. I think they're surprised they're winning, but yeah, they pulled everybody at a minute and a half left. And Paul had only played 33 minutes, I think. And Shea had played a little bit, had played enough. Schroeder had played enough, but those guys are cardio monsters. So I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, they pulled everybody down 10 with a minute and a half left. And I was shocked and very disappointed for my Steven Adams.
Yeah. Especially since they were at home. I could see doing that on the road, but yeah, they were at home last night, weren't they?
Yeah, and it was really well staggered minutes. So I think that's one thing too with Chris Paul. People are asking about. Somebody asked in the premium Slack, "Are you worried about Chris Paul after he played 33 minutes yesterday?" No, because they really split those minutes up pretty well. He played 5 minutes to start, then sat for a while. He's basically operating like a sprinter out there. So I think that's fine for me. I could see him getting the same run today, even with Schroeder in there. I mean, obviously, if Schroeder were out, that would theoretically make Paul and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander more appealing. But those guys were already appealing because Gallo's out. There's a lot of 3-guard lineups with all those guys on the floor. They're overlapping minutes in a big way. I really don't mind those guys again, but like we talked about yesterday, and I ended up being right. 2 out of the 3 guys can get there. And those, Shea and Schroeder both shot 20 times a piece. So there was a lot of usage to go around there. But 2 out of 3 just seems like it's going to be the safest outcome if you wanted to play those guys.
All right. Brogdon's out, and we just got an ownership, and Ersan Ilyasova is ticking up. He is 59.8% on DraftKings now.
So Brogdon's out. Let's talk about that one. Are you going to be going to Aaron Holiday at all? And hopefully not Justin Holiday. I know that seems to be a mistake people keep making whenever there is a Holiday who is in the lineup. But Aaron Holiday's price is up where I have, I think, one lineup with him just because I assumed Brogdon was going to be out. I don't want to get a lot of him going against Miami in particular for that price point. But would you want Aaron Holiday now with no Brogdon?
I'm mentally thinking here. No. I don't think so. And here's, I don't hate it. Now, I had somebody get annoyed with me on Twitter saying I said there was a bad play last night. And I pointed out that we literally spent 2 or 3 minutes talking about why I was not going to play the person. And I didn't say to not play him. And I said, here's the risk of removing somebody from your player pool, et cetera. So I want to just slowly remind everybody, these are our takes and we can be biased within this. For what I am trying to do, I want some guards that are in a better matchup. I want guards in the later game, or I'm going to spend on a guard. this would definitely be a contrarian spot. I just don't like it against Miami. If this matchup was not against Miami, if this was okay, they were playing OKC, then yeah, I'd have more interest in some of the Pacers backcourt. If I was going to play one of them, I think I'd lean a little bit towards McConnell personally, but that's just in the hope that he's going against the bench unit. From this game, I do like Goran Dragic a fair amount, actually, and I believe he's even in my shell lineup tonight for my main lineup that I'm playing in my cash games. So I do like him, but I'm not really interested. And yes, we have Noel and we've got the holidays, and I'm sure we'll come up with some other 'tis the season narratives here, but it
no
just
Elf,
doesn't.
Unfortunately, Alfred Payton not on today's slate.
No Elf, yes, but it's interesting. Now, so here's what I wanted to kind of point out with this. So I on a lesser degree do the Osmo massive amount of lineups in play. I play them in the lower dollar tournaments, and I just treat them like they're all one big tournament, because if you get into similar type payouts, it's the same. It's the same thing, and you can do this, and the math says it works, and so does my bankroll. But last night was interesting because I played a ton of De'Aaron Fox, and enough that I should have just been out of it. So I had 46% De'Aaron Fox. I had 39% Noel. He had 17 points, and I had 39% Marvin Bagley. He had 24 points. I still netted, put out $180. I took back in 221. So that's about what? It's like 20% ROI last night, because I had guys like Joe Ingles at 36%.
You did shout him out. He had a big day. He was actually
I had
tournament
Rudy
winner.
Gobert. I ended up with Napier, who survived at his price point, and he didn't kill me. I went down on Bogdan Bogdanovic. I didn't have very much outside of Napier from that double overtime game. And that double overtime game, it was double overtime, but go look at that score. What was it, like 108 to 105 or whatever it was? It wasn't a high scoring game. Point being is, you try to create lineups that are going to break free. You try to give yourself combinations that have a chance of surviving catastrophic type events. And for me, or bad games environments. The bad game environment I would like to avoid tonight is Miami and Indiana.
Yeah, and look, there are still players I have in this game, like Jimmy Butler. I have a decent amount of.
Butler's very, very cheap, and he's sorry. God damn it! I keep cutting you off. He is. I've got so much to say though, Chris. Come on, we never get to do shows together.
I'll whisper to you, Emac. I'm used to it with Eddie.
I am too. This is why I want to talk, and I need to let you have a turn for talking too. But Butler is a phenomenal play on DraftKings from a point per dollar perspective with where he's at. I think he's in play for your cash or your main line.
Yeah, no, like I think that Butler is an interesting play tonight. I love Butler in these kind of half court grinded out matchups, because the thing with Miami is they have a lot of guys who can score. Like, Duncan Robinson's had monster days because he just shoots a lot from three. He shoots 7 3-pointers a game. That's going to work against a team that sucks, but Indiana does defend well schematically. They close out on shooters really well. So Miami's not going to have an easy time scoring buckets. And Vegas gives them a 5-point decrease on their season scoring average for that reason, because it's a tough defense. Butler, though, is a guy who can get his bucket in any matchup. He can do the grind it out kind of thing, can get the layups, can get to the rim, can get to the foul line. Like, he does a skill set here that I think is appealing. So I don't mind him. And I guess Aaron Holiday, to close the loop on that, I think it is worth pointing out that he's much cheaper on Yahoo. He's $13 on there. On FanDuel, he's cheaper as well. Holiday's a different play to me on DraftKings, where he's priced up. Like, a little bit of Holiday I think is fine. More Holiday on FanDuel and Yahoo, I wouldn't mind. I don't know. We'll see what the ownership shakes out with that. Damn it, I said the phrase. We'll see where that lands ownership-wise. But actually, we just got a run of ownership 6 minutes ago. So let's see if Holiday. Yeah, Holiday hasn't taken an uptick yet, so we should get one more run before we go. But point being, different equation on FanDuel and Yahoo, so Holiday a little more appealing on those spots.
And yes, chat's now thinking we're crapping on it. We're not. No, Eddie's a phenomenal analyst, and we want you to make sure that you hear what he has to say. We also are pretty good analysts too, and we do all the work. We just never get to say anything. So,
it's just busting balls. I would say I've said
exactly.
The same thing to Eddie.
I've done more shows with Eddie than anybody. We and I, we figured it out. We've done over 500 shows together because we've worked together at 3 different sites. No, we get along great. I just make sure that when I'm on, he does the talking, and I set him up, and that's totally fine. It's just fun to be, with Chris or with Josh, where someone asks you a question and you get to answer it.
Yeah, look, it's sometimes you're running into the speeding train, and that is that is what happens in some of those shows. But no, it's really, people have to understand we are all coworkers and we enjoy each other's company, and in fact spend hundreds of hours with each other over the course of a year. So we're all good. Would never shit talk anybody, especially when they're not on the show.
Yeah, no, and I've hung out with Eddie in person a bunch of times, met his wife, met his daughter, and all that. No, I like Eddie a lot. I even talked to them when after the shows as well. So
yeah, oh
don't
yeah,
worry.
Robin's a peach.
Yeah,
Robin's actually, she's an ass kicker, but
yeah.
Eddie's wife is a fun character. Let's talk about this Philly and Orlando game, because Nick Bars asked in the premium Slack a while ago, and it's really not the most appealing game environment to me, though. The one thing that jumped out, and it might be because I have my antenna on a certain media circle and whatever, but since Ben Simmons got called out publicly, and there was a viral tweet from one of the Ringer writers, Kevin O'Connor, he's really been playing super aggressively in a way that I find interesting. Like, he's not kind of sitting in the corner as much. He's still not shooting threes. He's still, I believe the quote that Kevin O'Connor gave was he called him a cowardly shooter, and basically like compared him to Jahlil Okafor and Michael Carter Williams and all the other Philly busts who've come through. And since then, he's been driving to the rim and assisting at a really high level. I don't know how long that lasts, but I'm willing to take some stabs on him tonight at 15%. He was another guy who was in tournament winning lineups the other day, not owned again because the matchup doesn't fit what you think of him, but he's still a guy who can create plays for other guys, can create shots in a tough matchup against Orlando. Orlando's defense is really good. Kind of slipped a little bit in those couple weeks without Vooch, but they've kind of round back into form. You still have guys like Isaac and Gordon on the wings who are really strong, and Vooch himself is just a smart center in the middle. So I think it can be a spot here where Simmons has some use. But really for me in this game, I have some Embiid, I have some Simmons, and I have some Vooch. Horford and Tobias Harris grade out fine for me value-wise, but I just don't see the upside for them. EMAC, are you getting anything in this game at all between Philly and Orlando?
No.
Well, that was a real pensive thought there.
Well, I'm trying to see. I was changing filter share, and it was taking a second here on Fantasy Cruncher, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to crap out on me. But so calling it up, I have no main place from this game. I think Fournier at 5,700 is interesting. Al Horford, additionally, at 5,700 is interesting. Aaron Gordon is a pivot away from someone like Kelly Oubre. Tobias Harris, kind of in that Kelly Oubre range as well. Ben Simmons, 8,400. That's fairly priced. These are all fine prices and fine plays. I'm just not finding myself getting there. Let's look at the over under here. It is 210. So, it's one of the lower ones. These teams are both reasonably good on defense. And then Philly. Sorry, now I'm backwards. Did Philly play? Philly did not play last night, did they? These days all run together. Sorry.
No, they played on Christmas.
Together. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm looking forward. Tomorrow, Philly is playing tomorrow in Miami. Just food for thought. And then we already mentioned that Orlando's playing again in Minnesota. So I'm not really fired up for these teams. I'd rather go to the Atlanta-Milwaukee game, or I'd rather go to the Arizona game, the Phoenix game.
Yeah, one guy I did get to, I just didn't mention in my grouping there, but I did get a little bit of Jonathan Isaac just because of the price point, and I do think he has more upside in these kind of slower paced games that are very defense focused. There's going to be more block opportunities, more rebound opportunities for him. That is the days that he gets there. Scoring certainly not going to be his primary focus there, but I don't mind him overall. So he's the other play I got in the game. But as Emac mentioned, it's just not an appealing game environment. You're not going to find these projections popping terribly well for most people's projections because a lot of them are built off the Vegas total, and the Vegas total here is down for both sides, and it's under 210 combined points with the two teams. So it's not the lowest total on the slate. That goes to OKC and Charlotte, but still a low total relative to the modern NBA, and that does tend to lead to a little bit less fantasy production.
How are you feeling about Marquise Chris?
I got him a little bit, I think, because of Pascal not being in there. And
yeah, that must be why we're getting popping a little bit in our projections.
Yeah, I don't think he has the ceiling enough to get there, especially with all the guys back in the mix and Bauman's in the lineup again. And I don't know if he'll stay in the lineup because he did play really good defense against Houston. That's his calling card. I don't know. You need to make him do that today, but maybe you do. So there are some ways that he could just not get the minutes you would think he gets. But yeah, I have him in I think 2 lineups out of 60 or whatever, because I just think that he's an okay play at his price point and an interesting look too. I think I got one really interesting lineup with him where it was Ilyasova and him together because that frees up a lot of money. So Besides that, though, I certainly wouldn't have a ton of love for Marquise Chris.
Because I'm just going through here and looking at some of the guys in the later game, because it's an island game way out there after all the other games. So I like to look at those games just to see what are potential pivots and what's live in those games. And are some nice plays there that we can get to, but Saric, little risky with the minutes and production. I already mentioned I'm not a huge fan of Kelly Oubre. Damian Lee, his price is coming up, but he's been getting a ton of rebounds, which has been nice. And I think this is a continuing role where he could be okay. Alex Burks' price is up high enough where I'd actually and D'Angelo Russell is only $1,300 more in DraftKings. So at this point, I'd rather try to get to Russell, where I've just been rolling with this Burks role. I think that Glenn Robinson at 4,400, that's a very intriguing play. There's yet another guy you can go opposite of Ersan Ilyasova with. Again, savings is not quite there, but it's a 2v2 that'll get you there. But those are the guys I'm kind of looking at here. So I just wanted to make sure I'm getting a good mix. Kelly Oubre, we have at like 20%. I'm gonna match the field. And he's one of my favorite players. I just don't feel good about him in the he's not healthy. The things have changed. He started every game. He's over his last 12 games. He's like 6th in the league in minutes and all this. He's just he's not flashing the upside that gets us to those 40 fantasy points. I would rather take a chance on multiple of his teammates before I get to him, which is a shame because I love his decaf attitude.
Yeah, no, and I enjoy his hair. I enjoy his Supreme leggings that he's worn before. He's got a lot going for him, which I appreciate. And I would love to have that Kelly Oubre aesthetic if I could pull it off.
Yes, the swagger is high.
Yes, swag for days for him. So Stack asked the question. I think I didn't finish saying it because we just jumped around. But who's a natural pivot from Oubre on DK, assuming we get bad late news? So like we assume Oubre is going to be in. I'm not worried about him playing. But he asked if it's Damian Lee. To me, I would prefer Draymond over Damian Lee at the price point. He's the exact same price point as Oubre. If you're playing Oubre at small forward, you can make that swap on DK. So I would go Draymond. But Emac, who would you make that swap for if Oubre is not in for some reason?
I would agree with that, and I would prefer Draymond. If I was just building my lineup, I'd rather go to Lee because his positions are different. I can get more done with the shooting guard. He's still shooting guard, small forward. But if I'm just pivoting away from Oubre and everything else is locked, and I don't have a 2v2, it would be Draymond. Even if I had the money to go to Lee, I know that doesn't necessarily make the most sense, but I think if I had to get out of Oubre, less people will be on Draymond because of the multi-position eligibility. And we have plenty of point guards, even though Draymond has multi-position eligibility. His multi-position eligibility is not the same as Damian Lee.
Yeah,
who,
yeah,
yes,
no, I think
is
that's
shooting guard, small forward.
I also just don't expect Lee to be able to grab for like 14 rebounds on a game. I know, he is an aggressive rebounder. He's an aggressive points per minute guy, and was going back to Atlanta, so he can do things. I just don't see that being repeatable every day. Like in a game like the one against Houston is kind of the ideal spot for a guy like Lee to have that upside where he's playing a little faster, playing a little looser. Guys like Westbrook are grabbing rebounds. Like that's the spot. Going against Phoenix, who's still kind of tight inside. They've been playing a little bit faster, but I just don't see that upside for Lee again in this spot. I don't mind him as a play, but I just you can't expect that rebounding to occur. That's not the most sustainable for a guard. Let's go through the premium Slack, see if there's any other questions here. What are y'all doing with the Schroeder news? Mike Baker asks, I talked about this earlier, but that doesn't change anything for me, really. I don't mind him. I don't mind trying to target his bounce back either, because he was kind of disappointing yesterday, but still had over 20 shots. Did you get any Schroeder at all today? Because I didn't get these guys as much as yesterday because of the pace being down a little bit with Charlotte.
I'm not getting as much of those guys as I would have thought. I do, and we didn't hit on these guys. I like the both backcourts. We spent all the time on Noel and Adams, but I really like both backcourts. I think Graham and Rozier are totally fine, and I think Gilgeous-Alexander is my favorite amongst the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I like the Thunder overall, and I liked them yesterday. And Chris Paul obviously had the monster day out of that group. Yeah. Adams ended up being one of the better center plays. He outscored Andre Drummond. Actually, we talked about that exact scenario on the show where I think I said Jonas Valanciunas and Steven Adams can both end up being decent plays who were pivots to Drummond. I didn't realize they were all going to be in the high 20s or low 30s, but it is still a good spot for Adams in that situation. And somebody in the premium Slack asking, Scotty Mack saying, what's the best way to get different tonight? Based on the last round of ownership, to me, it's still playing Steven Adams. He's under 13%. I don't get it. I don't get why that would be the case.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I think that's it, and I'd be comfortable with that in this one.
Yeah, I'm dying with that Steven Adams ship tonight, or thriving hopefully. But going against Bismack Biyombo, I like Bismack, and I think he's made some strides this year. But whether it's him in there or Zeller or anybody, like it's going to be, they're not men who can stand up to the effect of Steven Adams inside if he's really going after it and getting on the boards. And the spot against Memphis yesterday wasn't the best one. He still had 32 fantasy points. I think this one can be certainly better. Let's see. 80 is Brittle asking, which great name. Any love for Bam on Yahoo? I have love for Bam on all the sites. He put up 55 fantasy points against Utah, and they need a size in there against Indiana. So I actually do have